Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel, and your other host this week from Ronin Console is Millennial Mike. Welcome on, Millennial Mike.
Good to be on. I'm liking our prospects here. It's looking pretty juicy, so let's get into it.
He's liking the show notes. He was gushing over the show notes. So we've got some good stuff coming up, but if this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Brocat Block, which is what Millennial Mike and I have been up to since you last heard us. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 557. So there's an anime adaptation, I saw this on your Discord as well, of the popular comic book and video game series Scott Pilgrim. It's in development at Netflix, and it will feature the original cast from the 2010 film. So the series will be produced by anime studio Aniplex and is set to air in 2024. Does that name mean anything for you, Aniplex? Are they reputable? Do they do good stuff, good productions?
Aniplex is actually a distributor. They license anime and they distribute it in the West. They're not actually a studio themselves. I recall hearing that it was a different studio. Do you have like a link or something like that? Because I think there was a different studio doing it.
I can pull it up real quick.
Although they're calling it an anime, most of the anime websites like My Anime List and you have like Live Chart and stuff like that record anime, and they have like upcoming stuff in there, aren't really dabbling with this yet. So I almost wonder if it's really,
So the anime house is called Science Saru.
There you go. That's the one. Yeah, I haven't heard of them actually.
Oh, so I've not heard of them. It could go either way, I guess. So you're saying by them calling it an anime, do you think it will actually be? Is that actually a Japanese producer? Or is this one of those cases where they call it an anime, but it's not really?
So I'm looking actually on Science Saru's website right now, and it actually looks like they have done Devilman Crybaby, right? That was a Netflix exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
That came out in 2018. They did another one called Lou Over the Wall. Never heard of it. Night is Short, Walk on Girl. Kind of reminds me of Tatami Galaxy or something like that. And then they have like a bunch of other stuff like Adventure Time. They have Crayon Shin-chan on here. So they have some stuff that's like very, I would say, non-traditional. So yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. They look like a straight up legitimate anime studio, but I just haven't really seen a lot of talk about this in the news articles that I've been reading. It did come up, but it doesn't really seem like people are really grabbing hold of this yet in the anime community yet, but we'll see.
Well, what does Scott Pilgrim mean to you as far as either the original film, the original graphic novel, or the video game? Is this something, I know it's kind of a cult classic in a way because it wasn't a giant hit back when it released. I played the video game and I loved it. I watched the movie, I enjoyed it. I never read the comic book, but we sold the hell out of it at the comic shop back when I worked there. But that's about as much as I got out of Scott Pilgrim. It was a small group of people, and over the years, I heard more and more people say, hey, that movie was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Michael Cera wasn't that bad. And it seems like it's growing in popularity, kind of like Speed Racing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, okay, so for me, what it means is it's not a lot. I mean, personally, I do believe I watched the movie, probably on TV. I never really sat down and watched it. And like many movies, it's something that I'm familiar with, that I believe I've seen, but I wasn't like really like engaged. So you know, if you will. Now I can tell you that I remember reading the comic book at the library. I saw it. Oh, interesting. I grabbed it in the library. The actual book itself is like smaller than a normal book. It comes like in a strange format.
Yeah, it's almost manga style, but not quite. It's a little bit larger.
Yeah, it's kind of like the manga style book. And so I do remember reading that back in the day. I will say that I think that this is probably going to open up a lot of people who aren't necessarily, like as the first one did, it's going to open people up into into animation that may not be really that interested, because it had such a big following outside of it, and it kind of bridges the gap. Because wasn't the original movie, wasn't it like part and part?
What do you mean part and part?
The original movie, didn't it have animation in it, or wasn't there like comic book elements to it?
There were like some graphics that they would put up, some word bubbles and things like that. And then there was one sequence where she's recalling one of her exes, and that's when Brian O'Malley, I think is his name, the original creator, did some artwork for it, and you could actually see the panels up there, which are original, and they're done in the style of the comic book. But it's in that one flashback that I remember seeing those.
I remember the joke about the vegans. That's like the thing that I remember most.
Yeah, you get vegan powers.
Like the level 5 vegan or whatever. Yeah, that's funny.
It was a fun film, and I hope that the anime, it's got the original cast coming back, which is interesting. You figured that and that's an argument we'll get into, I think, when we get to like the Super Mario Brothers movie. But how do you feel about them going with the cast as opposed to actual voice actors?
That's a great question. I think that because with voice acting, it's the benefit of voice acting is that you can do it again and again. As a matter of fact, I was recently covering something like this on Ronin Council, where they were talking about voice actors versus hiring like new people to voice, or like an actor to voice, because the difference is that an actor is going to expect a lot more money to do the same work that a voice actor is going to do. A voice actor knows how much work is involved just doing ridiculous amounts of takes just to get everything right, and they're used to that environment. So you're going to be able to work with them a lot easier, and you'll get the product that you want. The benefit of the platform or the medium itself is that you can do it again and again and again. But if you're hiring actors, you're going to have to pay arguably a far more amount of money to get the same kind of experience. So I think that if they do it well, it's going to sound great. You're going to get the original voices, and they're going to get the best final product if they are spending the money to do it.
Yeah, apparently Netflix has the money to do it, to bring back all these people, Chris Evans. And maybe some of that is that they want to be reunited with themselves, because it's been 13 years to this point. So they have grown since then. Career-wise, some of their careers have really blown up. And it'll be cool, I'm sure, for some of them to really get back together. So I'm sure that is a benefit to Netflix, at least. It's funny that you bring up the actor versus voice actor too, because I was just talking to Kelly about it, and I heard it on, I believe, Word Balloon, where they had these incredible actors on Batman the Animated Series, people that were used to plays and stages. These were actors, you know what I mean? And they were on this animated series, and they revealed that they're like, okay, how were they able to get such talent on a cartoon like Batman the Animated Series? And one, back then, it wasn't treated as like a kid's cartoon. It was something that was airing during prime time when it first started. So the voice director would try to get these actors that she was familiar with, that felt could bring something to the character. And then the reason why the actors would accept these cartoons basically for Batman was they would pay, either you would get this large sum of money up front, or you would get residuals throughout the years from now until the end of time or whatever. And all of these actors didn't think that Batman the Animated Series, they're like, it's a fucking Batman cartoon, I'll take the large sum of money. And a lot of times it was more than what they were getting from some of the other productions. So that's how they were able to get people like David Warner on and all these actors that are like, holy shit, how do they get these people on there? So,
and I think I should clarify too, it's not just the repetition that makes it better. Like with a movie, there's so many moving parts that you have to, like, capturing it is almost akin to magic, right? Whereas with voice acting, everyone records their lines separately. It's just the audio. You can look as goofy as you have to look while you're saying it. It doesn't matter as long as it sounds good. It's a lot more isolated and a lot more malleable. So that's kind of what I meant by the repetition. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, no worries. And I do hope that the original cast is able to deliver on it, because it can be kind of back and forth on whether it's a whole different art if you try to voice act. And sometimes it works out like it does in Batman the Animated Series. I know for Michael and Sarah as Mr. Freeze, they had to like do a bunch of takes with him. They had to be like, you got to get colder, you got to get even less emotion. And he was like, I'm not used to that. So someone like that, you know, they're not used to it. You'll have more work with them, but it works out sometimes. And staying in the world of anime, there's been a trailer released for the upcoming film adaptation of Sandland, which is a manga series by Akira Toriyama, who's the creator of Dragon Ball. The trailer showcases the film's animation style and teases a story which follows a demon prince and a human sheriff as they team up to recover a stolen water source in a barren wasteland. The film is directed by Yuichiro Hayashi, known for his work on Kageguri and Dorohedoro, and features music by Nohiro Sumitomo, who composed Dragon Ball Super. I didn't know that this was an adaptation. I initially thought that it was like an original film or original production, but I had to see it. It's got the same animation as the last Dragon Ball Super film, and I gotta say, it interested me. Just the premise alone, and of course that it's Akira Toriyama, I think I'm gonna be in for this one.
She heard quite a bit about this one, and it's also in the news bracket as well for our next episode in Ronin. But yeah, it looks cool. I mean, me personally, I'm not like a massive fan of Dragon Ball. I think I'm really appreciative that I got into it and that it was there for me when I was young. Nowadays, I really don't feel like the desire to go back to it. Dragon Quest, for instance, was also worked on by the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
I've dabbled in it. There was an anime. It's mostly known for its games. There was an anime I checked out. It was okay as far as the story was concerned. Ni no Kuni, however, is pretty fun. So I do really enjoy that. I think he had a hand in creating that, and the style is very similar to that. As far as like the actual trailer for Sandland, which I haven't seen the original manga series, it looks very Ni no Kuni-esque, almost as though the entire thing is like a trailer or like a cutscene or something like that, which I don't have a problem with as long as it's consistent. But yeah, it's interesting. I'll check it out for sure.
I'm still kind of turned off by the non-hand-drawn animation, and I'm sure there's an argument in there somewhere where when they produced it, there was hand-drawn stuff involved, but I might just be an old guy yelling at clouds where I like that tradition. We talk
about that all the time.
Yeah, and so in this case, I'll hopefully be able to push past it, sort of like I did with Dragon Ball Super. It's still not something that I prefer over the traditional animation, but it's not so egregious that I'm like, you know what, I didn't like it in Superhero, that I'm not going to watch Sandland because of it. It was bearable enough where I'm like, sure, I'll check this out. It's not going to be that distracting. Right now, Sandland is set to release August 27th of this year in Japan, so I'm assuming sometime next year for North America. The Hollywood Reporter is saying that Victoria Alonso, who's an executive at Marvel Studios, clashed with Disney over censorship of LGBTQ content. So there's a lot of shakeups happening at Disney, and I know you and I are, or at least I'm living for it. Alonso,
yeah,
she reportedly pushed for more gay representation in Marvel films, but Disney executives were hesitant to include this content as they would release these projects in certain countries with anti-LGBTQ laws. The Hollywood Reporter also mentioned that other studios, such as Warner Brothers, have been more willing to include these characters in their films, regardless of potential censorship issues. So Disney, obviously, very much money talks, right? They don't want to put too much. I think it was Black Panther, famously, where they covered up the Chadwick's face with the Black Panther mask on posters because they didn't want to kill the marketing for the film, where if they had a prominent black...
China.
Was it China? What did I say?
Well, yeah. So the marketing in China did that particularly. Yeah, in the West and other countries, it didn't. But in China, they did it specifically for the Chinese posters. And of course, then, Disney allowed that to happen. So they're, culpable. Yeah.
And they've done this with other films since then. This is not a new thing with Disney. So do you agree about Warner Brothers being more inclusive, or if there is a need to? I mean, who do you side with here, on Disney's or Victoria here, who is at least letting us all know that? To me, I think it's a good thing to paint this in a. So for me, I'm like, yeah, they should have allowed more, just because it makes Disney's look bad. But what do you honestly think?
First and foremost, I would say that Disney is not the same company as Warner Brothers. They're not. And even though they both make, I guess, comic book movies, or they both have big franchises or whatever that you could arguably say are in the same area, Disney has always been known and probably will always be known as a family first studio. So because of that stigma that they have, I wouldn't even call it a stigma. That's just like their history. That's the core of what they are.
Their brand.
Their brand. That's always going to be a massive consideration. There's going to be tons of parents that are going to be concerned about what kind of content their kids are taking in. And if it's just like a matter of like, oh, that movie's kind of dark, or that movie's not kind of dark, that's not really what's going to be as big of an issue. You start getting into the sexual expressions and gender expressions and all that kind of stuff, then it's going to be a lot more serious for whether people are going to actually spend their money. Like that might be something that would actually deter someone, right? So, or to encourage them in some cases. Warner Brothers, I would say, yeah, they're probably more willing to be, I guess, you can call it inclusive or whatever you want to call it. I would also say that Disney, there's always like a lot of talk around Disney whenever they do things like this. I think that's also another thing too. It almost feels as though Disney is doing it more, but it's just they're always running their mouth about it.
Yeah.
Whereas Warner Brothers, they kind of just do it all the time, and like no one really cares.
Right. And it's funny because a lot of times Disney gets credited for these things, but they'll also recoil at it because more recently, I think Lightyear, that was famously had a pairing in there that was a gay pairing, which I think was one of the first times in a Pixar film they had displayed that. I could be wrong, but due to that movie bombing, I'm sure some heads at Disney are like, oh, it's because of this content that we put in there. Let's go ahead and pull back a little bit and not consider throwing that in there again for a little while.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I know Victoria Alonso, I got to look into the news a little bit, and the last thing that was posted about it too, I was looking at Variety, although someone else might have posted something on it first, was that she exited. She big company Disney exited. In other words, she got fired, but she got the parachute or whatever. So I don't know if because this is the thing, right? Disney could very well have gotten rid of her over arguments about that, but I think it feels to me much more likely that she got fired for another reason, and she just chose the most hot button, exciting thing to bring to Variety or the Hollywood Reporter. Oh, this is the reason why they fired me. Get people talking and get people on her side. Like that's, to me, sounds a lot more plausible.
And I'm sure as these firings continue, we'll start hearing a little bit more of that airing of the dirty laundry moving forward.
Yeah.
And any interesting ones we'll definitely cover on here. But amidst all of this shakeup, there is speculation that Disney's recent cost cutting could lead to Marvel no longer operating as a standalone company within Disney. So according to reports, Disney has been exploring ways to streamline its operations and reduce costs in the wake of the pandemic. So this has led to concerns among Marvel fans that the company could be merged with other Disney-owned properties or integrated into larger divisions within Disney. Now, it should be noted that Disney has not announced any plans to make changes to Marvel's status as a standalone, and they continue to produce movies and TV shows. I can already hear one of my old subscribers at the shop where he would find any clickbait article and he'd be like, hey, did you hear that this is happening for sure? DC is no longer publishing comics. And I'd be like, no, that's a stupid rumor that Ethan Van Sciver put up or whomever. And I could already see this being as one where I'm sure this week he went in there and went, did you hear that Disney's no longer doing Marvel Comics? I mean, Marvel's as a comic publishing, it's cheap as fuck. Like, there's no way they're saving a lot of money by no longer producing that. So I'm not worried about it. But I could see them integrating Marvel Studios into that umbrella of, okay, let's just move it over to our movie production and TV, for example.
I mean, whether it does or doesn't happen, I feel like it's a nothing burger. I think so many things are nothing burgers nowadays. Because, like, think about it this way. Like, what are we concerned about as consumers? It's really whether the creative element of this has changed. Like, is this just a financial reshuffling of the company? How much will we see change in the way of the actual creative output? And I'm wondering, okay, let's say that Disney and Marvel are kind of siloed off as far as like how they operate as a company. How to what degree does that affect the, I guess, amount of creative independence that the executives within the Marvel Studios company have over the final product? Because I don't know, like when I watch Marvel stuff, I feel even now that it's just Disney superheroes.
Yes.
I don't think of it as like Marvel Studios.
Right.
I've always been saying this for years and years, but it's just Disney. It's not Marvel, it's just Disney. So the fact that they're going to merge it back together, fiscally, I guess you could say, I'm not sure if that's going to have any difference or
no,
any
you bring
change.
up
What do you think?
You bring up a great point. It's not going to change the amount of comedy that are in there. We saw the change happen as soon as they started producing these movies from Avengers forward. I mean, that's where you started seeing like a major change. Like it went from Captain America, the first Avenger.
After Universal. Universal.
Universal and Paramount and all the other studios that were involved in these characters. And so now from Avengers moving forward, you saw a drastic change in the way that these movies were set up. And they're not going to change that. I agree. I think they've been cookie cutter Disney ever since they took over. And you saw it with Daredevil. I didn't watch any of the episodes or anything, but I saw the clips from She-Hulk, and it's an MCU Daredevil. It's no longer the Netflix Daredevil. So I'm like, okay, that's now Disney Daredevil.
Right. I mean, even when Marvel is separate, I feel like the ultimate goal is the same thing. They want 4 quadrant movies, 4 quadrant TV shows that reach every audience. They want to be as accessible as possible. They want to kind of, shave off all the sharp edges and, have this nice, very comfortable, inoffensive final product. That's how it's always been. And so anyone who's talking about this, I mean, I feel like a lot of Marvel fans or aficionados really get like wrapped up in like, oh, Iger, Perlmutter, like this person, that person, like, man, they've had an effect, like phase this or this is going to be so much different. It's like, for me, it's like, dude, all the phases are the same. I mean, phase 1 is arguably the most different because of Universal. And after that, it's like, it's all the same to me. So yeah.
No, exactly right. People are like, I like seeing that on Twitter when they're like, after Endgame, it got shitty. And it's like, it's been shitty since before Endgame. It's been shitty since Avengers 1. And Iron Man 1 I didn't like. So yeah, I don't know. It
just took you longer to get tired of it. That's it.
Exactly. Or to see through the bullshit. I don't know what it is, but they're starting to slowly catch up. Although the difference is they're still going and paying fucking money to see some of these movies, which is kind of silly. But to the comic collectors, the comic brokettes, I wouldn't worry about Marvel Comics going away. And the same with DC Comics. People were worried about Warner Brothers merging with AT&T, and DC Comics kept publishing books. Now with Discovery, the same thing. Again, it's a small blip of income or cost that they're not even worried about it. They'll cancel a TV show over an entire comic division.
Side note, maybe I'll have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Why do comics even need to exist? Like, I mean, particularly the big ones like Marvel and DC Comics, because it seems like they aren't really the drivers of brand recognition any longer. The movies, the games, the TV shows, those are what like really stick people's minds and keep people aware of the brand. And to top that off, they've always done a horrible job with directing people back to the comics. They've never even cared. Comics is doing worse, at least from the last time I checked. Maybe you have different data than I do, but comics as an industry is doing worse than it ever has. What's the deal? Like, why does it still exist? Is there some sort of financial reason for it to exist?
Well, I think currently it is the fact of it is a branding thing. As long as superheroes are the action films of today, they're going to keep them going. And I think it really is just a matter of working the brand and keeping it going and making new toys at the very least. But I'm
talking about the actual books, the books themselves.
Right. It used to be that someone like Dan DiDio, who was on a few months ago, he was at meetings with comic shop owners, and this was pre AT&T. It was like right before that merger, that buyout, where it was still Warner Brothers. And he was talking about how Marvel Comics was at that time, and they still do it, they were having their characters merge from the movies into the comics. And he's like, it shouldn't be that way. It should be the comics that inspire the films. It should be the stories that inspire the shows and the video games. It should be the other way around. And it's not the case. So when he was on, he was like, we need to create exciting stories that are going to get people talking. We need to create new characters that are here to stay, that are going to be the next thing. And we need to be that inspiration for those. This is the groundwork. And then he was fired. So now both companies are simply regurgitating the stuff that they see on the big screen, and it's like, oh shit, Black Adam is coming out this month because I saw them do it, so we better feature Black Adam in a bunch of stuff. Let's do the Black Adam variant cover month. And I'm like, okay, so now we have 2 Marvel Comicses. That's what I saw happen, and it's still that way of well, here we go.
What you've told me is that the comic book industry is kind of parroting off of the movie industry. But my question is that what is keeping the comic book industry actually afloat? Like, if for instance, if they stopped selling Marvel Comics, DC Comics, I don't actually think it would have any real effect, because a lot of these movies these comic books, are coming out at a loss anyway. Right. Except for like some of the top ones, they make some money, but like most of them are coming out at a loss. And even though that the most well-known comic books, I don't think that they are a big driver of brand recognition. In other words, like, they don't get people really invested and keep them aware of the brand as much as like the movies, the games do and whatnot. So I'm arguing you could actually axe it, and you could maybe even save some money. Like, is there a financial reason it still exists, or do you think that maybe it's like not an ego thing so much, but like if let's say Marvel, nix their comic books, that would look bad. Maybe that would have it would have more of a negative effect on the brand recognition if they ended it than if they let it keep going. Maybe that's the answer.
Like, I do see them ending it once this MCU stuff is done. Once they're like, all right, we're no longer making them, I could see them cutting it. I don't see the Marvel comics surviving past the MCU's hype or whatever. The only other answer I have for you as far as today, just based on the years that I ran that I helped manage the comic shop, is that yes, the books are not like, the comic shop will make some profit on it, obviously, but the company itself, you're right, they do operate at a either even amount, or they'll lose money on some of these books based on the creators. But where I was able to see how they made some money was in the graphic novels, so the trade paperbacks. I've heard publishers say, like IDW or Boom, they're like, yeah, we'll lose money on the single issues, but then we'll make it on the compilations, because we'll sell those forever. Udon Entertainment was just on, and they're like, yeah, we reprint Street Fighter Volume 1 all the time. And it's like, maybe at that time when those single issues came out, they weren't the biggest money makers, but now over 10 years later, those pages are still making money for them. So there's that aspect. As long as people are still buying the graphic novels, it'll make these companies money. The statues, the PBC figurines, and the Funko Pops. So I've seen those come out of the pages from the comics, like the Red Goblin. Some of the characters, Spider-Gwen showed up as a figurine before she ever showed up on the big screen, and people recognized her then, as far as the comic readers, and they were buying the merchandise. So that is the only other answer I have for you, just based on what people bought. Yeah,
I suppose a lot of the morale do really come from the enthusiasts. Like, imagine like all the enthusiasts who collect comics, who collect toys, who really like still believe in the brand, like for what it once was and for what it is and for what it can be, not just the bandwagoners who watch movies and talk about it on Twitter, but like the real hardcore guys. If they just lost their flame, if they just lost all their steam, like that would really probably pull the rug out from underneath a lot of the hype for everything. So
oh yeah, absolutely. And I saw the readerships were people in their 30s through retirement age. That was the bulk of my subscribers. It was an older demographic. It was kind of all the kids were buying the kids books, like manga, like that's what they were into. And it's like, okay, they can't get into comics, and they're all kids books, but they're not going to be reading Dark Knight's Metal, which is a little bit skewed towards an adult audience, just based on the content alone.
Well, it depends on what manga you're talking about, because
I guess so, yeah, like Chainsaw Man and whatnot. But they can
most
get a
manga
crazy.
is
But
Yeah.
they're into
we'll get into that
manga.
later.
They're not into comic books. So when that readership passes on or moves on, if they can't get kids into comics to continue that generation, yeah, that flame is going to go out, and then you're not going to have characters. For example, Batman Who Laughs. If the comic readers hadn't been taken by it, or even the Red Death, if they weren't enamored by these characters and bought the hell out of the issues, which they then did miniseries and one-shots, figurines, and now you're seeing the Batman Who Laughs show up in Fortnite and show up in the Red Death, showed up in Batwoman, apparently. Even though it was a different version, that character still showed up over there in the Flash. So if you didn't have these comic readers, you wouldn't have these characters suddenly showing up on the big screen. And I do think it will be an issue in the future if you don't have that readership, because then you're not going to have that influx of new characters or that excitement behind some of these stories. Here we do have some of that voice acting stuff coming back, as actor Seth Rogen revealed in an interview that he did not do any voices for his role as Donkey Kong in the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Rogen stated that he was clear with the studio that he doesn't do voices and that he would sound like himself in the film. The casting of major Hollywood celebrities in the movie has been pretty controversial, with some gamers arguing for actual voice actors. That has been a criticism I've seen from people that have seen the Mario Brothers movie early. They're like, that just sounds like Seth Rogen. That's not... He didn't even try to quote-unquote sound like Donkey Kong, which I don't know what that would be, but that's been kind of critical.
Monkey sounds, basically.
Yeah. I guess so.
This always comes into play with both acting and voice acting. Well, mostly with acting, when you can see the person, when the performance is not transformative. And I like it, and I like anyone else like a transformative performance, but I also recognize that you can cast someone in such a way that amplifies all of their best, attributes and kind of diminishes their lesser. So I feel as though what people are really saying is that they don't like Seth Rogen. That's basically what they're saying. And don't get me wrong, Seth Rogen, especially as time has gone on, he's gotten kind of annoying, mostly because I spent too much time on Twitter. I don't care anymore. I'm rarely ever on Twitter anymore. I can see why people will be kind of annoyed that they have to see his face when they're trying to escape into the world of Mario. So, yeah, I get it, but I don't feel it. I don't care.
I do like Seth Rogen, for the record. Just about a month or two ago, he was talking about how the MCU movies are geared towards kids, and I'm like, thank you, fucking. And all the MCU people got real pissed off at him, and they're like,
but then then tomorrow he'll say something about DC or Zack Snyder. Yeah, I mean it's just too. Everyone's kind of coming out of the woodworks now and talking about how the MCU really isn't all that, because
they keep getting asked.
Well, they keep getting asked, and also, I think they all kind of know that it doesn't really have that strong of an effect on Marvel. Like, it never has. Like, no one's gonna say something about Endgame in the midst of Endgame unless you're like Scorsese, right? But now you have all these crappy Disney Plus shows and like these like dumb Ant-Man like triple spin-offs or whatever, and it's like, yeah, Seth Rogen's like, yeah, I mean, sure, he's not gonna get any blowback from it. Like, no one cares because they all kind of subtly agree, So I don't know. It's just not really that. It's not a hot take.
Well, I do appreciate him saying straight up, like, look, I told them ahead of time that I'm not going to fucking do voices, and they were fine with it. So he's like, all right, cool. So I like that he passed the blame on. I like that transparency.
Maybe Miyamoto thinks he just naturally sounds like a big ape. So
yeah.
He's like, yeah, he's got that natural primate sound to him.
I wonder how much say he even had, really. Like, I get that he's very protective of it, but I wonder if once they sold the idea to him, if they were like, all right, we can do our thing.
Sold the idea to who?
To Miyamoto and Nintendo, of like, let us do this film, this Nintendo Mario Brothers film. And I doubt that they had to go, okay, Can we cast this guy? Are you cool with us casting this person?
There's been a lot of discussion. Actually, this is something we could talk about if you want to, but there's been a lot of discussion about whether, because see, Illumination, they're a subsidiary of Paramount. Is that right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. Because they tie in with like Paramount's also Nintendo Nickelodeon and all that.
Okay.
Nickelodeon. So yeah, they're all kind of in the same place. But there's been talk about Miyamoto and the gang or whatever trying to
sorry to interrupt. Illumination's actually Universal Pictures.
Universal,
Comcast.
Yeah, you're right. So yeah, I was just making things up. This is something I'm not making up, I don't think. There's been some talk about Miyamoto and the game or whatever, Nintendo trying to exemplify Mario as the lead hero, as opposed to some of the trailers which you've seen where Peach has a very prominent role, very dignified, very heroic role, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was kind of cool either way. I was going to go watch it, and I'm kind of just like really hyped either way. But I will say, if they try to girl boss Peach up so much that we don't really get to feel as though this is Mario's world, you know,
mm-hmm.
that'd be kind of sad. And I would still enjoy it if there's cool action or whatever. But, you know, that would be kind of like maybe a little bit of a shame. I will say, so this is tie it back into what you were saying. Does Miyamoto actually have any say in any of this? You know, I would say probably. And in most scenarios, whenever a Japanese company has any dealings with a Western distributor or like production company, the Japanese company is always like, listen, if you don't do this, we are going to just just completely pull the plug. For instance, Ghibli always had a deal with Disney as a distributor for their stuff, and they got away with stuff like Grave with the Fireflies and stuff like that. So they never really had an issue getting their stuff out the way that they desired it. So I think that this is probably going to be the same. Nintendo's extremely protective over their stuff, so I think it'll be fine.
Well, I've got my tickets, and it sounds like you're going to go see it as well. And maybe we'll come out with a review episode or something. We'll definitely discuss our thoughts in it in a future episode for sure. IGN reported, this was huge on Twitter. I know some people kind of expected it, but it's kind of a big deal because they reported that E3 2023 has been canceled due to lack of sustained interest after major companies like Nintendo, Microsoft, Ubisoft pulled out of the event. The report suggests that the industry has shifted to more direct marketing methods, such as hosting their own events and live streams. In spite of this, June will still see the gaming news with Summer Game Fest and Xbox Showcase scheduled among others. So E3 being gone, I don't think they're coming back from this one, man. Like, I know they shut down because of the pandemic, and this year, during those shutdowns, these companies were like, let's do the Nintendo Direct thing. Oh, we don't need to spend a bunch of money on these trade shows. We can stream it straight to people and release these trailers, or do it through Summer Game Fest. They have options now, and since E3 is not the big player anymore, by them shutting this down this year, I really don't see them coming back.
I guess the only thing I'd have to say about this that I think would be, valuable would be that I personally do like E3, and I like the idea of it sticking around, mostly because I feel like it represents a time where everyone can kind of compete on the same playing field. And even though there was like always kind of this air of like, oh, this person won E3, that person won E3, there was kind of like a unification of gamers and gaming culture that we were all kind of just in it together. This is our space,
Yeah.
But now that everything is even more separated, I'm just so tired of all the, this console, that console, like, especially when none of them are really doing anything that's truly that interesting. I think it's extra silly because I have some friends that I talk to regularly, and they're really big into games and whatnot. And they're always going back with the PlayStation, Xbox thing. And it's just like, maybe I would get that if it were like last generation, maybe. But it's like this generation, no one's doing anything that's that interesting, to me at least. So, but I would like to see them compete and just be on the same playing field. I almost felt like it made everyone like more likely to actually like push and really like create something that would win on this stage that was E3. So I think it's a shame. I think there's probably some benefits to having it the way that they're doing, kind of more siloed off, but I don't know. What do you think?
I'll definitely miss E3, if anything, for the cringe compilations each year when, we lived through the era where these execs, they would straight up put up the game developers and they're like, hey, you worked on this game, go do this presentation for an hour. And it's like, these guys aren't public speakers. Like the infamous Konami shit. And And then they'd be like, okay, well, let's hire a comedian and they can help host. And the comedian's like, I don't fucking know. The comedian's making jokes about nerds and how there's a bunch of virgins at the convention and shit. And it's like, we saw like super unprofessional shit during our time. And I'm going to miss that. Like, and Summer Game Fest tries really hard to make it real professional because you got these big names in there. Al Pacino was there last year. So it's kind of like, all right, well, now it's more, I guess, worked out with some of these companies. But for me, just knowing that I lived through some of the craziness, that's the part I'll miss.
Yeah. In other words, it sounds like you really don't miss it that much. You're being very positive. You're being very charitable right now, but you think the E3 needs to die. It's like, man, we had some good times, but it's time for it to die now.
It's really, and it's really not needed, to be honest with you. I like E3 for its concept, for its idea, for the fact that I grew up with it, and just for that, I would be an advocate of like, yeah, try it next year. But as an industry, honestly, gamers, the younger ones, I don't think they give a shit. I don't think they care. They're like, just announce the thing and I'll know about it. Put it up on Twitter, put up the trailer on TikTok, and that's all I need. And that's really all they need to generate buzz.
Yeah. Well, the moment it really died was when people couldn't go to the actual, like the idea that like it was exclusive,
right?
And you had to go there, and like, man, you know, like, wouldn't it be so great to actually be there? Like, there was things that you were missing if you weren't actually there, but you can get a little glimpse of it over the trailers. You know, you can watch. You're getting a little peek. You know, that was always kind of what was the appeal, I would say. But that's been long gone. Everything is digital. Everything is, you know, video zoomed and whatever.
Sure.
So
yeah, that was a big thing in junior high. My friend and I would talk about that. Like, we're going to go to E3 one year, and we're going to play the new Zelda before anyone else. We're going to play the new Star Fox, whatever. That was the appeal of like, let's get our hands on these games, because all we can do is watch game trailers and see people, or watch G4 and be like, oh man, that game looks really cool. They look like they're having fun. Now, like you were saying, they'll say, here's the game coming out and the demo is available right now. Download it. And they'll put it straight. It's way better now. Like, it's for like, I would love it as if I were like, I wouldn't even have to wait. But because of that, there's no anticipation. So what is the value anymore? Aside from being a journalist, you need to go so that you can throw up your article.
When VR becomes mainstream, that is the moment where I will become a boomer. I will be. That's the moment I'll become a boomer, because I'm not gonna adopt that. I'm not gonna be like, yeah, you know, just yeah. I'm not, oh, hey, let's go around the virtual, you know, showroom. It's like, no, this isn't real.
Live in the real world, man. That's what we're gonna be saying. Like, you won't go to Disney parks anymore. You can now pay a ticket to go to a VR Disney park and ride the VR Disney Space Mountain and shit. Like, that's what's gonna. You're right. That's what's gonna happen. And I agree with you. I'll be I
won't accept it. No.
I'll do it if my grandkids want to do it, but otherwise I don't care. I remember we used to wait in lines.
And I'm going to complain about the whole time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. $200 and I didn't even leave my house. What the hell is this? Yeah. Fuck that.
Really?
Well, more gaming news as Multiverses. That's the platform fighter from Warner Brothers Games and Player First Games, will be taken offline on June 25th to pave the way for a full release next year. So it plays a lot like Smash Brothers, but features Warner Brothers Discovery characters. So in spite of frustration from some fans who paid for the open beta, the game will still be accessible offline and with training modes. Multiverses director Tony Hun explained that the break will allow the team to focus on new characters, maps, modes, netcode improvements. This is another one. Maceo called it, and I think he's right on this one too. This game is also not coming back. Just like E3, I don't think we're going to see a full release of Multiverses.
Well, I mean, there's no full release of any game now, and that's the whole point. Like, everything's always in perpetual alpha, perpetual beta.
But this was one of those games that they called actual, like, this is the beta release.
Fortnite is technically... Well, actually, you know what? I think they actually just recently took Fortnite out of beta, I think.
Oh, recently. That's true. That was on there for forever, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't... It might come back. I've heard people talk about this game, I think mostly for the memes. And I think that's kind of the whole point. It's like, it's a meme game. You know, even Smash Brothers, I think, got to the point where it itself kind of became a meme game. I think that it has a much stronger base. So I think people will continue to play the games as long as they're released and they won't get tired out as quickly.
Right.
But I think it's starting to kind of devolve into that. Well, the only thing that we can do that's really novel is put in characters that you won't expect in. So I don't know. It's kind of bloated. I'm kind of done with the whole. What do you call this? Like the multi-game fighter or whatever. Kind of the same way that I'm done with the multiverse. Kind of the same way that I'm done with isekai. So.
Fucking isekais, man. People love that shit, especially Scott.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I know.
I never hear isekai more than like when I hear your episodes, and it's usually from Scott.
Well, it's funny. Whenever he's talking to me about it too, I'm like so not having it. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying my best to be positive, but I'm like, I don't like it. I still hate it.
Readers love it though. It's crazy. Well, multiverses, I do think if it does come back, they're going to have to invest heavily in it. It's going to have to be something that gets all of the Twitch streamers that were playing it back into it, back streaming it. It would have to double its cast. It would have to have a ton of extra stages, really refine the gameplay. And I don't know if Discovery is going to pump the money into it, honestly, because Multiverses was a Warner Brothers AT&T project. Now with Discovery on there, they'll probably quietly just not bring it back. That's just my prediction. I don't know. Maceo brought it up too, and I'm like, yeah, you're probably right.
The best way I think to get this game back is to double down on its like competitive nature. I think that games like this that are online multiplayer or just multiplayer games and fighters or whatever, they really get a lot of prestige when you can look at like a player, like a streamer or like a pro game player, and like they main this one character and you play that character too, and you want to be as good at your character as this guy is,
Mm-hmm.
Like it gives people this aspirational like level to it, and it makes them feel like there's this meta, I mean, every game has a meta, but it's like much more tangible. Like this is what high level gameplay looks like. So when you really exemplify the pro competitive side of things, I think that's what really helps these kinds of games. And I think until this has that, it's never gonna get its feet off the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it'll just be quickly forgotten, and they'll move on to something else. Well, we do have, speaking of something quickly forgotten, Shazam 2. We got Shazam 2 news as director David F. Sandberg reacted to a recent joke made by Bruce Campbell on Shazam's disappointing box office at an Evil Dead Rise screening. So Bruce Campbell laughed, said, quote, "Did you see the movie Shazam with the guy Zachary? Yeah, neither did anyone else." End quote. So Sandberg defended the post, saying he thought it was funny, but some fans were unhappy with Bruce's comment, calling it disrespectful to superhero movies. But to be fair, since it released in the UK and the US on March 17th, the movie has made around $104 million worldwide. In comparison, the first Shazam made $367 million when it was released back in 2019. So this was a bomb. And I think David, when he shared it, he was like how it started and how it's going. And then he ended it with the Bruce Campbell thing. So he's not happy, obviously. And he's being nice by saying, come on, Bruce is just joking around. But it's a fucking shit show, that whole release and I think Blue Beetle is going to be the same thing. I think The Flash is probably not going to flop as hard as that movie because of the nostalgia factor in there. But it's all just an absolute shit show on the creatives.
This movie did come. It's currently out in theaters right now. Is that right?
Yeah, for theaters that are still willing to carry it, because it's coming out in digital in less than a month.
I don't even know what to say, bro. I don't care. If the movie was doing well, I would tell you I don't care. If the movie wasn't doing well, I would tell you I don't care. I don't even care enough to like dislike it or whatever. The first movie was trash. The fact that people even remember people were talking about how Shazam was like a horror movie, and the fact that like Sandberg, is doing it like, man, like this is what DC horror could look like, and because there's that one scene where like
with the executives
or whatever, I'm like, oh my god, this is so cringe. Please stop. So I'm happy that there's another bomb to help wake some of these people up. Hopefully.
Yeah, well, there definitely won't be a Shazam 3. We know David's moving on. Zachary Levi is begging for his fucking life on TikTok and Instagram, and it's not happening. He's asking for jobs left and right. Well, Warner Brothers also shook up the Harry Potter fan base as they are close to a deal with HBO for a TV series based on the book series by J.K. Rowling, and this is all according to Bloomberg. The series is expected to be set for both cable and streaming, and it will consist of 7 seasons, each season based on one book in the series. So Rowling will be involved in the project to ensure it remains loyal to her original material, but is not expected to showrun or be the primary creator. The deal for the HBO series is still being finalized, and more information about Warner Brothers Discovery's streaming strategy is expected to be announced soon. So I have to admit, and I stand by this, about a year ago, I said they can't do it with Fantastic Beasts. They tried to do characters and worlds outside of these books, and people weren't in for it. I was like, okay, you either remake the movies or you do Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, bring back the cast, or to be honest with you, don't do another set of remade movies, do a TV show. And that seems to be the direction they're going with. I don't think it's a bad decision, to be honest with you. I get that people want the original actors, but they're all going to fucking tune in to this. I honestly think the Harry Potter fan base will not be able to help themselves and will watch this show.
TV shows oftentimes have really bloated budgets, as opposed to movies where they put more of. I mean, even now, it's less, I feel, than it was at one time. But it seems like they put more of their budget into the actual final product. The production values are higher, whereas TV shows, you could have movie level production values, but it still look like TV shows. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I think it really is going to just depend on, I guess, marketing, how long it is, if it releases all at once or, episode by episode, the casting, the lack of things that get people, frustrated or feel like, losing faith in the project. I'm looking at, Rings of Power or whatever, which apparently I read this article that said, like, basically no one watched it. I forgot exactly what the article said, and I won't misquote it, but yeah, I don't know. I'll have to see. HBO TV shows. What was the last big HBO TV show?
The Last of Us.
I really enjoyed that. I didn't look at, nor did I care about how well it did, but did it do well? Do you remember?
It did incredible. Yeah, people were. It had higher streaming numbers than House of the Dragon, which at that time
that's insane.
Was their big show.
Well, that's great because the show was really, really solid. That's awesome. Well, if a video game which did really well in its time,
mm-hmm.
did that well, I'm sure that a series with the original book writer as a TV show, with the original characters and all that, I think it could do very well.
Yeah, I think because it is on HBO, I still associate, as much as shit we've gone through, I still associate HBO with quality for the most part. I like The Last of Us. I like House of the Dragon, and I think it does have the potential. Like I would rather this show be on HBO if I had to choose. Like, it's going to be a TV show. Okay, I'd rather it be on HBO than have it be on Amazon or Netflix or Paramount Plus or any of those. Just for some, I don't know. It feels like the production is a little bit more expensive. Like, they just take more care. Like, I watch House of the Dragons and I see some of those effects with the dragons, and I'm like, this could work in a film. It's that kind of quality.
Yeah, I do actually agree. I would say HBO, there's something more like, I guess you could say, kind of prestige or at least traditional with the way that it makes its project. It feels more like cinematic.
Yeah.
And less televisual. Whereas all the other streaming services, especially Netflix, looks extra digital, extra televisual, extra algorithmically generated.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I would say, aside from the fact that I would say half of HBO shows now are actually like traditional HBO and half of them are like CW ports,
Yeah, and I think that might be a product of all the fucking mergers that have been happening. Stuff like Titans, clearly a CW show. And I think Stargirl, too, was another one that went from CW. So it's like, all right, it's going to have that fucking quality, that joke quality that people associate with now on CW. People are saying that about the Blue Beetle movie. They're like, that looks like a CW movie. They should watch it on CW at the very end of the trailer, and it would have fit just fine.
Don't worry, we'll see Black Lightning and Flash and Supergirl and the Legends of Tomorrow all hanging out with Blue Beetle before you know it.
Oh, I'm sure it will happen. I gotta say, though, as a Harry Potter fan, I'm gonna be watching this. I gotta say it. I will be. And I know some of the castings, I'm sure, going to be controversial, though. It'll be more 2023 casting, right? At least one of the three will be a person of color. whether it be brown or black or whatever, Indian, I don't know. And that's going to be a big deal. And I'm going to be like,
they're going to change
it.
someone. They're going to make someone gay, you know.
Someone's going to be gay, absolutely, and someone other than Dumbledore, right? Because that was like, I think, one of the only characters in the series, from what I remember. And
I think she did it like after the fact too. Like she
retroactively
did it. Yeah, that was the one. That was the big thing.
It's gonna happen. I'm gonna watch it though. Yeah. Well, that does round out the news for this week. We do have a comment from Adrian on Patreon, referencing last week's episode. He said, quote, "Congratulations to you and Palpakelly on baby number 2, Daniel. Regarding Mighty Morphin Power Rangers 30, I watched some of the trailer. I'm on the fence about watching it because of the continuous drama behind the scenes. Saban and now Hasbro seem to just be a continuous problem for the brand. That's a longer story. I just wonder if the Super Sentai cast in Japan had any of the same issues. Probably not, if I have to guess. And I think Amy Jo Johnson just didn't accept the storyline being offered. With the Snyderverse, I want to be hopeful. But after years and years of Warner Brothers treachery, I can't be positive that easily. Even if they restored the Snyderverse with just 2 more Zack Snyder's Justice League films, I would not be satisfied. After all the potential stories that were robbed from us, I want the equivalent of the sealing of the Sistine Chapel for the Snyderverse, with the Batfleck film, Cyborg, Atom, etc. I also hope it is not an animated film or a graphic novel. Would I support the new DC film after the full Snyderverse being done? Probably not. Warner Brothers caused way too much hurt for me to start supporting them again." End quote. And I think that's the sentiment with a lot of people that I've seen in the movement of like, I know Adrian wants like the Atom, Cyborg, the Green Lantern movies that we were promised or that were a part of the original slate. I totally get it. But I have seen a lot of people just be like, just give us the last 2 movies and we'll watch them, we'll support them, we'll throw our money at it. Doesn't mean we're going to go watch James Gunn's universe, but we'll give you money for these 2. At least give us that. I think that's the point that a lot of the fans are at. But I totally get what Adrian's saying of, let's say we do get those last 2 films, there will always be the, damn, we could have gotten an Atom. We could have gotten Zack's Green Lantern universe of films. We could have gotten his Flash, because now we're getting the other one, so we're never going to get those back. So I totally get that there's still that overcloud behind all of this.
To add to that, I would say this. I am frustrated with what they did to Zack Snyder, but I feel like the deepest issue that I have with this, the deepest issue, is that I like the kinds of movies that Zack Snyder made. And the fact that they did it to Zack Snyder is frustrating, but what's even more frustrating is that I feel as though they would never allow something like it to be made again. It's like less like about Zack Snyder personally and more so that they don't want to have someone who's kind of transgressive like Zack Snyder is with some of his stuff, And I mean, not like severely transgressive, but I mean, I guess within the realm of superheroes, he was kind of that.
Nolan too, and they were happy with those risks back in those days, but something definitely changed,
right? And now Nolan's no longer around, Zack Snyder's no longer around, so that is the real frustration. It's not like what could have been, because it's like, listen, it's not only am I frustrated that those things that could have been won't come to be, but I also know that they'll never even accidentally go back in that route. Even if they hire some other director who has a vision, who who cares about the final product, who has a creative he's like insistent upon his creative vision and whatnot, that's never going to happen again. It's always going to be more 4-quadrant, more Marvel-esque kind of stuff, and that's what really frustrates me. I mean, because as long as Zack Snyder and Nolan are around, they're going to make movies that I can always watch this movie elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and we'll be there to support it. That's one thing that also frustrates me on Twitter when they're like, we'll support his Rebel Moon. And it's like, oh, we will. But we're also going to ask for this other thing, too.
That's true.
I will put out Todd Phillips' name, though. That's like the one, I'm like, holy shit, how did they manage the Joker film in the middle of all of this, right? And they tried to not let it happen. That was one of the things that you're kind of talking about, where Emmerich even tried to kill that film. And
then they tried to make Todd Phillips the DC, but then he noped out, right?
Yes.
There's something about DC that's not going to keep anyone who has a creative vision around, who's willing to do something that's kind of transgressive.
Well, a lot of that too is the fact that he tried to do something like that. He was like, let's do the DC Black Label films. After Joker, let's do a Clayface film, and this will be the first one of them. And they were like, yeah, we're not interested in that. Let's just release your Joker movie. And he was like, okay. And I think after that experience, he's probably like, no, I'd be happier with a Joker universe, and he'd probably be more willing to do like that Clayface original. But the fact that he was told no, he's probably like, nah, fuck you guys. Pay me for Joker 2, and maybe we'll make a Joker 3, but I'm not going to get in bed all that deep with you guys.
As long as James Gunn is around too, like, I mean, there's so many, there's far too many things that just are so disgusting that I'll never coming back.
Yeah, like I'm the most tempted on Joker 2, but I need to look at the producer credits. I hope James Gunn doesn't get any fucking money out of that. And I know the people that are gone, like Hamada and Emmerich, they're not profiting from those films anymore. But I'm still like, if you guys don't give us those last 2 movies, though, like if you give me Justice League 2 and 3, I'll be there for Joker 2. And I guess we'll find out at this Full Circle event. And I kind of know your answer already, but I'll still ask you, since we haven't heard it on the show itself. Mm-hmm. What do you expect out of Full Circle, if anything? Do you expect it to just be a showcase of the 3 movies, a goodbye to the Snyderverse, or an announcement for more?
I don't think that there's going to be any more.
Okay.
To be honest, I just think that Snyder is always so positive. He's always like, yeah, anything could happen. And he's not willing to give or to kill the idea that, it could happen. So therefore, we're gonna be perpetuating the situation where people who are fighting for it will always continue to fight for it, because Zack never said not to, and he's always being positive. He's not being negative. He's always neutral, or he's positive. Well, and even he's neutral or positive about projects that aren't his own. He's always just a positive guy, and that's always been his his good point and his bad point. He has like all the makings of like of a director who's willing to crack a few eggs, but he doesn't have any of like the kind of the toxicity, the grit of a director who's willing to say something that will get his name on a headline and be like, he said this to the fans, this to this person or whatever. He's not very, combative or whatever. So I wish he was a little bit, spunkier like that. But whatever. Maybe if he was, he would have got kicked out earlier. Who knows?
Oh, he had a lot of doubt. I remember when he was talking about that after the reaction to BVS, he was like, maybe we are going in the wrong direction. Like he was like, even we were doubting because of how crazy it got. So but now obviously looking back on it, he probably.
Well, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts on the whole Full Circle thing?
Well, based on, and they've heard it already on the last week's episode, I think it's we're getting more. I don't know if you've been following his interviews as closely or some of the clips since he announced the Full Circle event, but he was like, hey, what's with that Superman statue poster? Like, you changed the hand placement, or was that a mistake? He's like, I don't know, I can't say now. And they're like, yeah, you changed the hand from 5 to 2, saying there's 5 films, but 3, and we've released 3 so far. And he's like, now's not the time to reveal that. So I'm like, oh, dude, you're fucking revealing it right now by just saying that. And then
when I hear the word Full Circle, right, it makes me think, okay, you're coming back to where you started, right?
Right, sure.
So the thing is, when I think of the 5 movie trilogy, I think of something that has a beginning and then an end.
Yeah.
So I feel like the term Full Circle is like more of like a remembrance, or kind of like a memorial, or kind of like, hey, let's remember where we've come. You could also think of Full Circle like, okay, we're closing we're closing the gap, we're finishing it, because it's like we're making a full thing,
right.
Yeah,
so we know Superman's journey's not done, and he's quoted a lot with Superman
big time,
as being the hero's journey.
Yeah, 5 movie arc. I believe in it. I believe in it. I just don't think that practically it can happen.
I mean, my trepidation is that it's going to be like an animated movie or a graphic novel or something like that, and that's where I would be massively disappointed.
Yeah, if it were an animated movie, I wouldn't watch it.
He would have super compromised, right? I'd be like, Zach,
yeah.
It's all or nothing to me.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I've mentioned this before on this podcast and my exiles other places, Twitter. Zach has compromised. He compromised with JL. There were things he couldn't put in there that he wanted to.
Jon
The
Stewart.
movie, yeah, and he made the movie as though if it ended, it would be. He put as much in it as he possibly could. This isn't a movie that's confident in what it is, and therefore it doesn't need to throw everything at the wall. It's like, hey, I'm doing this for the fans because you stuck in for me, and if I never do anything else again, I want to make sure that I give you as much as I can. Like that's what Zack Snyder Justice League is, and I'm fine with that or whatever. I personally think it's the worst of his three movies that he's done so far in the DC cinematic universe, and I think that's because of the compromise. And I don't know, I just the people who he associates with and the way that he talks and how willing he is to even cater to the fans. Honestly, like I don't want you to cater to me. I want you to be staunch. I want you to do whatever you want to do, regardless of the consequences. That's why I liked him in the beginning. So I don't know. I think he's a different person now. I think he doesn't want to really be in the hot seat all the time.
Do you think that we will get that Green Lantern scene? Because he's showcasing the Snyder Cut at the event for the first time in color in IMAX. Do you think that he'll screen the Green Lantern version in there? I know that's been one of the rumors.
Yeah, it's possible. I wonder. I mean, because if you looked at Martian Manhunter, it wasn't done. It didn't look good. It looked okay. And obviously, we know the constraints, so we can apologize for it or whatnot, and that's fine. I understand, but it wasn't like the quality that I would have hoped for a prestige Sistine Chapel, as Adrian said, at level product, right? And I think that if we get anything with Green Lantern, it'll probably be the same because he did the lighting like on his like driveway, right?
Yeah, he filmed it right there. It's like Jared Leto was saying. He's like, Zach's a madman. Like he'll get it done no matter what.
Right, which is cool. I mean, I like the idea that he can make something look so good with so little, and that's how. And I love that fact that he's directing a movie. He gets in there with the camera. He picks up the camera. I'll shoot it myself. I like that idea. That's very like aspirational. But when it comes to the Sistine Chapel level quality that we got from Man of Steel and BVS especially, that's what I want out of all Zack Snyder. That's what I want out of DC.
Yeah,
that's what I want DC to be. And I think even if we get Zack Snyder's 2 additional movies, even if that happens, right? And likely it won't. Likely it'll be a animated movie, and likely not even that. It's just straying further and further from the grace of God. So yeah, I don't know. Well,
I will again.
I'm not very positive.
I figured you wouldn't be, just based on the years I've known you. I'm like, he's not. I actually expected you to be like, I don't. And maybe you were about to say it, but I thought you were going to be like, I don't want the last 2 movies. And you almost got there by saying like,
yeah, no, I mean, if the movies actually come out, I will be willing to watch, like, for instance, a trailer. If the movies come out on Netflix and they have like a timetable, right, for the movies to come out, like, oh, Justice League, 2's coming out here, and then the last one's coming out this time, I'll immediately be skeptical. And then if we see like a trailer and it looks kind of crusty because everything Netflix does is crusty, I'm not going to even watch it. I hate the idea that, like, okay, Rebel Moon, an original project that is made with the budget and the story in mind, right? To like be one unified project, okay, it can work. But we already have BVS as a marker for quality.
Yeah.
So it's like, if anything less than that, it's just not gonna cut it.
Well, yeah, like you were pointing out with Martian Manhunter, or I love the Snyder Cut, but I do still cringe when Henry Cavill's scene in the nightmare sequence shows up, because it's the exact Landon scene from BVS of him looking down and looking up at Lois, and I can't unsee that because I've seen BVS and then I see the Snyder Cut and it's like, okay, because Henry Cavill wasn't willing to, or his pay grade was too high, or whatever the reason was. Yeah. So they ended up using it was a recycled footage thing. So in spite of that, you're right. The benchmark is BVS Man of Steel because those effects still hold up. They're still better than a lot of films in 2023. let alone
100%.
superhero films, but just films in general. I don't think it'll be on Netflix, just based on the recent interviews that he's been given. He doesn't sound like Netflix is at all a player. He has since thanked, I had the names already, but it was like two of the producers at Warner Brothers Discovery, and he was like, yeah, I want to thank them for this event and for when the time comes, other things. And I'm like, Zach, again, you just fucking revealed that these two producers at Warner Brothers Discovery are the ones that are giving you these extra films. So
what they need to do, okay, let's talk about what they would need to do to make us all in. Not just like your ears. What they would need to do to make us all in. So this is the list, the laundry list they need to do to get me all in.
To get you. Okay, to get you all in? Well, here we go.
Right. So James Gunn would have to have no part of it. This has to be
I agree.
His what is his new studio's name?
DC
Stone Quarry
Studios. Oh, okay. You're talking about
Quarry.
Zach. So yeah, Stone Quarry.
Right. They would have to basically, this needs to be DC Studios and Stone Quarry production. Okay. No James Gunn involved in it. They need to give him one massive budget, a record-breaking budget, as a matter of fact, to make both movies back-to-back, James Cameron style. Okay, and then release them on a timetable. Not like, oh, we're gonna work on this and then we're gonna work on this, because then something could happen between the two movies. Like, no, I need both these movies to be the same level of quality. I need both the qualities to be high.
Film back to back. I'm with you.
Film back to back. All the casts back. Original story. 2.5 hours each movie minimum.
I think that would happen. Yeah.
Although, I mean, listen, I hate to be the person to like be nitpicky about time, because I don't actually think it matters. I think the person who's creating the movie should be able to make the movie however it needs to be. But if it's under 2 hours at the studio, it's nowadays, it's just how it is. So it needs to be 2.5 hours or more, and shot in film, not digital. I'm not. Come on, Zach. Like let's go back to this real cinema. Let's go back to the auteur days. Okay.
Well, I think only the IMAX one was like, the IMAX scenes were the only digital portions, right? Because he did Army of the Dead and he did Nightmare. Didn't he do them with the Dreamlands and
Army of the Dead was a red.
Oh, okay. You're right.
Yeah. He used like a custom lens, but it's not celluloid.
Okay.
And then what was the other movie? Army of the Dead. And what was the other one?
It would be the Snyder Cut then at this point, right? Because he used IMAX cameras for a lot of it.
Yeah, it was IMAX on most of it, and part of it was shot on film though, but not the IMAX scenes.
Gotcha.
From what I understand, but yeah, so I would say those are the big things: budget, celluloid, none of these snakes. Get all of them out. Make sure that Zack Snyder's name is all over it, and make sure that the time isn't, no indication of studio meddling, at all.
Okay, but this is actually a much better list than I expected.
Yeah, and also an extended theatrical run. Like, I don't want these short theatrical runs and then straight to digital either. It needs to be like
a full release.
Like a full release, exactly.
Yeah. I think that's all. I think the only one that I'm like, okay, maybe this might not happen is get the original cast back. Because of Amber Heard. I don't know if they would bring her back. I'm not too sure. I don't know what his stand, because he has gotten rid of people before based on their record. So I don't know if they'd recast her, if people would be mad. But he did bring her back for the Nightmare sequence. So I don't know. Yeah. Maybe honestly, everyone would be.
I mean, Amber Heard, I don't care that much, but it's like, I don't necessarily like Amber as she's annoying from what I can see, and I don't even know her, so I can't really speak, but whatever, right? But however, I will say that you should bring her back just for the heck of it. Like, that's the thing. Like, just do it, Zach. Just do it. I don't care what they say. I don't care what the people on the internet say. Like, don't care what I say. Just do it. Like, be so like bullish about it. That's what I want. Bring Amber Heard back and make it so good that people just watch it anyway.
Well, the other doubt I have is, and I think if he doesn't come back, the movie doesn't happen, is Henry Cavill. Based on what they did with Black Adam, all that embarrassment that he went through of like, I'm back. Oh, wait, I'm not fucking back. And do you think he'd be like, I don't even want to fuck around with Superman anymore? Or would he be so desperate of like, I was almost Superman and now I'm not. Oh, wait, I can be again? That's the one guy that I'm like, I don't know if he'd be back.
Snyder brought him into this world. The Rock or whatever took him out.
Mm-hmm.
Or James Gunn took him out, and Snyder can bring him back again. That would be so. Like, that's the full circle I'm talking about. That's the full circle I'm talking about. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would like to see him be like, hey, like redemption. That's what I hope he would say. Henry Cavill is a really weird one, though. I mean, he's another big roadblock to, I think, any of the things that we would like to see.
Well, his agent specifically, Danny Garcia.
Yeah. Also, imagine we get some animated thing, right? And they don't even bring the original voice, actors for the voice cast. Instead, they hire
Seth
voice
Rogen.
Actors.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. Seth Rogen is Aquaman.
Well, by the next time you're on, barring any Super Mario episode we may or may not do, we will know one way or the. That's the one thing I do think this event is. We will, based on the weird hints that the obvious hints that Zach's been giving, we will know for sure what the future is of the Snyderverse, good or bad. I think we're gonna know.
We made a deal with someone that we would watch the Batman if they announced.
With Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby tried to rope us in. See, I signed up for that so quick because I'll never watch the Batman no matter what, right? However, I will break my principles. I will lower myself to watching that, and I will endure the shame if that happens because I'm so convinced that it won't happen.
Well, the bet was by October of last year or December of last year. That's why I was like, oh, they're definitely not going to announce it by then.
That was a long time
So that deal
ago.
is done.
Oh yeah, you're right. That was a long time ago. Shoot.
So now if he were to say if it gets restored at all, I'm not taking that deal because I don't want to watch the Batman.
Yeah, big time.
I think there's a chance.
If it's announced, will it be this year that it's announced?
Yes.
Or I guess because of the Full Circle event, right? That's what
it would have to be at this Full Circle event. If he doesn't do it at this Full Circle, I think he's going to lose. Personally, I think he's going to lose a lot of people fighting for it.
The first bad omen we're going to get is that the nerd queens or whatever is going to be the ones to
Dude, I can't stand this stuff, man. The people that do these fucking events, these streams.
But dude, we're going to get, like, let's say it's announced, right? We're going to get, like, the worst of the worst. The people who are talking against it or whatever, they're going to be the ones to announce it, And then it's going to be like, man, I'm right out the gate. Like my palate is already soured.
He's been doing interviews with the same people who are like, it should be an animated movie, or let's support Rebel Moon and forget about the universe. Let's support Black Adam because it's those same fucking people. And I'm like, come on, Zach. And I hear that he's being gatekept by these people that are already on that side of that movement. So that's why they're getting those same people in there doing these streams, and Zach's just saying yes to whatever. But he's gotten tagged in so much stuff by now that he's just choosing not to get involved or listen, or he's too busy to get involved in the politics between all of the movement here. I don't know what it is, but it sucks. And I know that I had reached out on Vero during the Full Circle announcement. I'm like, oh, come on the podcast. Like just I'm like, if I'm ever gonna try to have him on, it's going to be now for this Full Circle event. So let me just fucking throw this message in a bottle out into the ocean and see if anything happens. And then as soon as I saw those people involved, I'm like, okay, they're not going to allow me to have any access to Zach at all because I've been blocked by some of them. I've been vocal against some of them. I'm like, yeah, that shit is sailed.
We could wax poetic about this forever, but yeah, there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of them are not ideal. But there's this tiny glimmer of hope that we could get this one perfect ideal circumstance. And see, that's the only circumstance that I will accept. I will accept no other circumstance. So that's why it's so grim for me. Because even if basically like 9 out of 10 things happen, there's going to be a big flood of people. Man, this is great. I get that we had a compromise, but I'm not going to accept it. So it's as good of a failure to me if it's not like the perfect circumstance.
Well, let's remember this checklist because I think that's all doable. Except for because I agree with all of them. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, man. The only one, again, I think is doubtful is the casting. Everyone coming back, but we'll find out. I don't know how willing Zach is to recast some of the bigger players. But we will find out in just a few weeks, and we will cover it here on the show. Let's jump into the final portion of today's episode, the Broket Block, what Millennial Mike and I have been up to since you last heard us, what's been going on, what we've been playing, reading, watching, what's been making us broke. So Millennial Mike, let's start off with you. What have you been up to since you were last on in your personal life or even with the Ronin console?
Ronin Council, man, it's back up. It's full on, baby. Like we're doing this thing. We got Sam and Scott, on too. So it's been really great. Three hosts has been very lively. It's kept everything very dynamic, and I think that we have a really good kind of atmosphere. A little bit of pushback. We got Scott with his cultured content and his and his isekai, and then we got Scott with his more
Sam.
Yeah, did I say Scott twice? Yeah, and then we have Sam. He's more.
He's the anime king. He's a super weeb.
When it comes to actually just watching anime, he's not. He doesn't watch that much anime every season. He has like usually a handful. Like I would say I have like the biggest list of seasonal anime, and then it's Scott like right behind me, and then Sam has like the least amount. Although he goes to cons and stuff, so like he makes me look like a Netflix level bandwagoner, compared to him, because he actually like puts his feet to the ground. So
he also bows at Japanese restaurants.
Right. No, I have to admit that's pretty weeby. So yeah, the podcast has been going great. We're really getting them out on on time, and I think the last episode that we did was really good. I think it was our best episode.
Yeah, that's what you said on your show.
Yeah. Oh man, that makes me feel so fuzzy that you heard it.
Yeah, I want to know what that feels like, because half the hosts, when I bring up something, they'll ask me something. I'm like, I just covered that. I just talked about it. I'm like, okay, I know who doesn't listen.
Yeah. So I do appreciate that you listen to it, man. I do. But yeah, no. So I think that everyone will really enjoy it, and we're gonna actually be a little bit more ambitious and try to start doing more posting to like social media, or we like put clips on social media, and maybe even have some like bonus content and things like that. We have two editors now. Sam is doing editing. He's swapping back and forth with me, so that's really been helping. Man, I big time, and I know he's busy, and the fact that he offered to do it, and give this guy right here, Dan, mad props, because he's the one who hooked me up with Sam. I am indebted. Like this is just as much your podcast as it is mine, man.
I'm glad it worked out, honestly. Like Sam's a really good guy, really easy to get along with. I mean, he and I hit it off immediately when I was working at the card shop with him, and obviously we got to know each other extremely well. And I'm like, this would be a great suggestion for Ronin console. So I'm just glad it worked out, because I know it easily could fall apart with different personalities and all that stuff. And Sam's like the easiest guy to get along with.
Yeah, Bill, big time, really great. So yeah, it's watching a lot of great anime this new season. Just coming out. Not all the shows that are going to be out this season are out. The last one that's coming out, the last premiere, the last episode 1 will be out on the 19th. The last one that I'll be watching personally will be out on the 14th. Oshino Ko is a big one I'm really excited about. I talk a lot about that show on my podcast, which is coming out on the 12th. So definitely get prepared for that, guys. So yeah, I'm really, really excited, and I hope that anyone who's listening to this gets a chance to check out the show.
Of course, and there will be links to Ronin console in the description of today's episode, as it usually is whenever you, Sam, or Scott are on to help me host. You'll be happy to learn. Sam will be even happier, but I actually downloaded the Shonen Jump app. It's
the Shueisha Jump.
Yes. I don't know what Jeshua is. Isn't that the Jewish name for Jesus? Yeshua or something? Or is that the Szechuan sauce? I can't remember.
Szechuan. No, it's Shueisha or Shueishua, I believe. But yeah, the Shonen Jump app, where you can basically read the manga for free, and it's official. Yeah,
so I'm debating diving in on the $3, because I read a bunch of chapters from I downloaded Dragon Ball Super because I'm like, I can get caught up with it, even though I'm buying the physical graphic novels. I can
wait, $3? What do you mean?
It's $3 a month to download to get full access to all the chapters.
Oh, okay. So you have Manga Plus, right? Which is by Shueisha, Manga Plus, and that's Manga Plus is I believe like a Jump. They're like they work in tandem with Jump or something like that. But you're talking about a different application. So it's like $3 a month or something.
Yeah, it's called Shonen Jump, and it's by Viz Media.
Oh, okay. Maybe they have another app. But okay.
Should I be downloading this Manga Plus instead?
Well, download that as well. Read whatever you can free and whatever you can.
So is that a legit app, Manga Plus?
Yeah. It's absolutely legit.
All right, and you have like My Hero Academia on there and stuff like that, or is it only certain publishers?
Well, I think how it works is you can like read like the last so many chapters for free, and then if you want to have access, so like you can read like the first so many chapters of the series for free, and then the last so many chapters of the series for free, and then there's a portion of chapters in the middle of the series that you have to pay to be able to read.
That's what Shonen Jump does, the one I have now.
Okay, I gotcha.
So it gives me the latest chapters for free and then the earliest chapters, but if I want to read the full series, I got to pay $3 a month.
So, but you want to read the whole series. That's what you want to do.
Yeah, because I'm not caught up on any of these except for Dragon Ball Super. Like that's the only manga I'm
reading.
Well, I want to check out Food Wars. I want to check out the My Hero Academia, how different it would be from the anime up until Almighty is no longer a player. I had something else on my list because I know people like Death Note. I was reading Chainsaw Man. I'm caught up on that. I mean, I'd probably dive into some of the stuff that I used to sell a lot of, like Punch One Man. People seem to like Mashal, Magic and Muscles. I might check that out.
That first episode came out today.
And even like Demon's Lair, I would check out as well because I'm caught up to a certain point, but I know it's no longer on Netflix as far as the new seasons when those release. So I'll start reading the manga.
I see. Yeah, I would definitely. It's definitely worth $3 if you can read all of the Jump. I think that the Shueisha, because I'm looking at the app now and trying to figure out, because I don't really know like what the companies are, like what the difference is. I know who Jump is, but I don't actually know who Shueisha is. But you can read like basically all the Jump stuff on Shueisha and other stuff that isn't Jump as well.
Well, maybe I'll send the thing to Sam and ask him what he would recommend as far as these two apps. He might have a better idea on which publishers are where. But I'll check that out too. Yeah, I'll see what he thinks of Manga Plus. But there you go. And I don't know how much of this I'll actually... That's the reason why I'm like not diving in on the $3 a month is because right now I'm on paternity leave. So it's like while she's asleep, I have a little bit of extra time of like, okay, let me read a little bit of manga. Let me finish some of these books that I'm working on. And by the time I get back to work, I don't know if I'll have time to read manga. Just like I don't have time to read video or play video games, especially with a baby now. So.
Yeah. So I have been under a rock. So congrats.
Thank you.
You probably talked about it on your podcast. And I'm just a terrible audience member. You know,
there it is again. Yeah. See, I'm not feeling the fuzzies. Anti-fuzzies over here.
Well, you know, I've been liking your listening to and liking your posts on social media. Have you noticed that?
I have, yeah.
So
thank you. And I know you don't like being on Twitter too much. So
I hate it, but I get on there to promote my podcast and then promote your guys' podcast.
There you go.
Great. But no, what's the baby's name?
Her name is Sophia, and this is the episode where I can talk about her being born because Kelly was normally on the rotation. She'd be on next week, but she's like, who's going to watch Sophia when we record? And I'm like, oh yeah, she's a newborn. We can't she's not young enough to where it's like, okay, go watch TV and we'll, like Leo right now, he's 5. He'll happily watch the Cubicles or whatever it's called and let us record. But I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know when you'll be able to be on again. So
how many years apart are Sophia and
5 years, 5.5.
5. Okay. That's pretty manageable. Yeah.
So it was a rough outing, man. Like she was born 2 weeks early, but she was 8 pounds and 1 ounce. So she was still like pretty big. If we had waited till the full April 15th due date, she would have been, I don't know, close to 10 pounds. It would have been
chungus.
Yeah, exactly. And like all I'll say is it was the fucking scariest experience because while the birth took shorter than it did with Leo, there were more complications. Like the blood pressures were really high on both of them, which is why we needed to induce with Kelly. And that's why the doctor's like, I don't want to go past March 30th for this. So we went in to get induced, and their blood pressure was still all over the place. And then when it came time to, start pushing, both of their heart rates dropped like to an alarming rate, to where the doctor's like, we need to get the NICU in here. And that's when I was like, oh shit, like stuff is happening. And Kelly's passing out from, the heart rate and the blood pressure. And when the baby Sophia started getting really low that's when the doctor's like, okay, we need to get her out now. And when I saw the doctor getting flustered, that's when I fucking got scared.
Yeah, wow. Doctors aren't supposed to get flustered.
No, hell no.
Wow.
And she was getting
everything is good now.
Yeah, and she was taking suggestions from the nurses, and that's when I was like, do we know what we're doing? Like, what's going on here? And when she came out, like, she wasn't moving right away. It was like the longest 15 seconds of my life, because I'm like, oh my God, was she born still or whatever? And they were rubbing her chest and everything, and then she started moving and crying. I was like, oh fucking thank God. Like, I started crying and shit. Like,
wow,
man, it was a scary experience, but but things turned out well. Like, it could have easily gone bad.
Wow. Well, yeah, congratulations. And it is really a big relief to hear. I didn't realize that all that happened. I feel bad that I wasn't up to date.
Yeah, and none of this, I didn't put any of this on Twitter, because and I don't care that it's out there on podcasts either, but it's just not something that I'm like, here's what happened. I'm like, I'll let people that care know about it, people that listen to the show, or people that ask. But thankfully things turned out well, and there's still some fallout as far as Kelly. She has to check her blood pressure for the next, I think, 6 months. And because of preeclampsia, that could happen, and it's something I'm not familiar with. But I'm like, hey, do what you're supposed to be doing, and we're just grateful that Sophia is healthy and that Kelly is able to be at home and so far be functioning as she did pre. She feels great, she says, and she's able to eat the things that she's wasn't able to over the last 8 months. So counting our blessings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's good to hear. It's good to hear. And I'm glad that both you, Kelly, and Sophia are all doing well.
Yeah, we appreciate it, man. But that about rounds out the show. I do have something I want to ask you after the end jingle, but please let them know, even though there is a description on today's show, let them know where they can find you if they want to interact.
First and foremost, you can find me on the Reason I'm Broke Discord. Check it out. It's the best Discord you can find on the entire application or the entire internet. It's amazing. The best server. You can find me on the Exiles Network Discord as well. You can find me on the Lazy Gaming Guys Discord server. I'm on Twitter at Ronin Council. So that's where you're going to find the podcast posts and things like that. That's pretty much it for now. If I actually start getting more of the content out in different places, which I hope to eventually start building back up to that, maybe YouTube or something like that, I'll let you guys know. But those are going to be the safe places, safe bets.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Millennial Mike. And if you enjoyed any of the anime or manga talk, absolutely get into Ronin Console, and even like gaming. You guys do cover some video game stuff over there too. So there's a lot of cross-pollination on. If you like our content, you will enjoy Ronin Consoles. And if you have enjoyed this episode or have enjoyed the coverage up to this point, whether you joined us on episode 1 or even just last week, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I know, or even on Facebook, because we've had some anti-Snyders kind of give us some bad reviews, specifically gun fans. So if we want to try to offset some of that, especially on our Facebook page, if you can take 2 minutes and leave us a review on Facebook and then a review on Apple Podcasts, that would be very much appreciated. The gun fans have been the most toxic so far, even more than Spider-Man, even more than the Batman. The gun fans are like especially toxic. So we've been feeling it on that end just a little bit. So if you can take a few minutes and leave us that review, we would really appreciate it. Otherwise, you can find us at thereasonsimbroke.com. I've been Daniel, joined by Millennial Mike, and Broke at Core, all will be well. So my question to you, Millennial, because I on the latest episode of Ronin, I heard you guys really get excited and giddy over anime becoming more popular, manga becoming more popular, a little bit more mainstream. And you're not the only ones. I've seen it from a lot of fans of anime. What is it about the growing popularity of movies, TV shows, and manga, all based on Japanese animation and manga, that excites you guys? That what are the prospects or the positives to these things getting more popular?
Yeah, so there's a bell curve. You know, when something first starts off, it's exciting that it's novel, and you feel like you know about something that no one else does.
Mm-hmm.
However, most of the time, the production quality isn't at its height because there isn't enough demand, right? So there comes a point where the demand is as high as it will be, while at the same time, the artists are getting most of the creative freedom before things start becoming too efficient. If it were up to me, I would probably have anime stay in its like infancy forever, where it's always that niche thing. But knowing that we're gonna get to a point where it's gonna like peak and we're gonna get like you know Hollywood level movies adaptations based on like Gundam Wing or something like that, or
Alita.
Neon Genesis or Alita Battle, like seeing those things is really great. Of course, seeing it go over the hill like superheroes have, where it's all just corporate schlock now, you know, that's kind of sad. So I'm not excited about that, but there's a lot of good things to see. And I will say that the bell curve will be it'll be a lot wider, because I think that for some reason Japanese creators are just they're very stubborn and they don't want to change. They don't want to let anyone change, you know, their stuff. So I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive things to see. What do you think about it?
As an outsider looking in, it doesn't affect me as much because whatever happens with anime, manga, I'm only reading Dragon Ball Super, right? But it just always fascinated me because I've gone through something similar with like video games where we've seen them really blow up, and yeah, it hits a point where like the people that used to bully you are now into that stuff. Like I saw that with video games or comic books, for example. So now with manga, it seems like the teenagers, regardless of whether they're in that nerd group or in the anime club, like they all read manga. And I had a coworker that she told me, she's like, some of these guys used to make fun of me in high school and now they're reading My Hero Academia, and it's like, fuck you guys, that used to be my thing. So that's kind of what I was exposed to. But then hearing you guys talk about it and how it's potentially a good thing that more people are getting into it, it makes more sense that you're saying it's going to get better until it doesn't. So I'm like, okay, it'll be really fascinating to see when, let's say, for example, anime adaptations are the next big thing. Like those are the action movies of today, kind of like the MCU superhero films are now. And then when it becomes that, where they'll be amazing for a little bit, and then Disney has their anime division or, you know, that kind of thing, that's when I'll be like, oh shit, look at that. And I'll be out of it, right? I'll just be like, yeah, I kind of casually watch some of these. But no, that answers a lot of questions, because I was kind of curious to see, because I've heard the opposite of, no, it sucks that they're into it. But there is a huge positive, as you were saying.
Let's enjoy the ride while it lasts.
There you go.